Hoople's Cat. Today on the Hoople's Cat channel we're going to look at making your own hand sanitizer, and I'm not actually going to make any because I don't think it's a great idea. There's a lot of fire issues with making your own, but I can see why it might be a useful idea if the COVID-19 disease becomes really widespread. And somebody asked me about this. It's actually one I got from work that had been expired. The active ingredient of this is ethyl alcohol, 70%. And that's what you want to look for, 70% alcohol, 70% ethyl alcohol. But a lot of people are doing how to make your own hand sanitizers online. So I thought it might be an idea if you're one of those people that are watching those videos and are even thinking of doing it, because let's face it, a lot of times we watch videos and we never do it. But if you do, you might want to get yourself a copy of this. And it's actually going to be linked in, and I'm going to talk about this and show some sites where you can actually still, at the moment, in early March, get the active ingredients. Though the active ingredients are rapidly becoming very expensive and are running out. So much like masks, face masks, products like this are seen as 100% protective, and they're not. Nothing is against the virus. First off, you need to know how to actually use products like this, and that's always a great idea. But you also need to know something very important. If your hand's got any visible dirt on it at all, or even if it doesn't, the best hand wash rub that you can get is bar soap. Okay? You should have tons of bar soap. If you're a prepper and you've been prepping for a while like me, you should have a lot of this. I think this is even getting out of stock and expensive as well. But I have a lot more of this stored away than what I have. I have way enough to last me well into an apocalypse event, because something like basic soap hygiene is a critical factor in stopping you catching germs and viruses and dying, right? I mean, this is a critical function of civilized society that most of us don't really think about. And while I'm on the topic, I also have a little amount of this stuff. This is the Castile bar soap. Absolutely great stuff. You can use this as a hand soap, but the reason I have it is to make laundry detergent in a grid down long-term situation, so I don't actually have to have filthy clothes all the time, though my standard of hygiene would drop. So what I'm recommending is that you have lots of bar soap and you use bar soap. You can actually carry hotel bar soaps around with you and use them as a disposable soap if you're in the public. Hand washing with soap and water under running water and mechanically drying the hands using a disposable paper towel or a reusable single-use cloth or linen towel is absolutely what I would recommend. However, you might want to consider how you could make your own alcohol-based hand sanitizers if you have a doctor's office, or if you have a veterinary practice, or if you have a store that people are going to go to in the condition of lockdown quarantine in COVID-19 outbreak. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this, because I think this has got a very limited application. It's not something I recommend. Get hold of Purell. Get hold of something that works, that's been made for you. But if there is none, and you have none, and you're going to need some, you might want to get the active ingredients for this, because there's only basically 3, and get them now while they're still sort of available at a sort of a reasonable price, and stack them away, because they won't actually go off, and you can use them up to about 2 years afterwards. The hydrogen peroxide, of course, would go off. So of course the first thing you need to do is get a hold of this. This is an essential guide. Then of course you want to read it, and you want to read it carefully. So we've got 2 different types of formulation. One is based on ethanol, which is alcohol, pure alcohol, 96% and higher, and the other one is actually based on isopropyl alcohol, 99.8%. So you need to get hold of one or both of those ingredients, and whichever one's most cheapest and locally available would be the formulation you would use. You then need to get all of this stuff, but you're going to make it, I am imagining, on a smaller scale, so you would divide downwards. Obviously you can make 10 litres or 50 litres using the ingredients they give you, and you'll need 100 litre capacity. So you can scale that down quite remarkably, and I would suggest certainly for the first batch or 2, use a smaller batch. Now, word on glycerol. Glycerol is actually glycerin, but it's much more of a pure version of it, and that's actually kind of hard to get. Hydrogen peroxide remains easy to get, and so those 2 things you should be looking at. They don't recommend adding a colorant to any of this, and they don't recommend adding perfumes to any of this, but if for your own personal use and you want to, hey, get some essential oils and whack it in. So the 10 litre preparations, and I would do this as a 1 litre preparation initially, just to make sure you can do it. So that's the amount of ingredients you need. Now for those people who are Americans, you'll have to look at what a litre is, and you should have litre graduated jugs in your home anyway, but you probably don't, but you can do the conversions yourselves. So the majority of this, 83% of the formulation is going to be ethanol, alcohol pure, and the rest is a few bits and bobs to sterilize it and also to make it emollient, to make it actually fit upon your hands. Now the other concentration of this, the final concentrations when you've mixed it together, you'll notice the alcohol is 80% or higher, and that's what I would go for in your own product, and the isopropyl alcohol is 75% or higher. Obviously the one I'm using is 70%, but it's a commercial product. I think it's actually best to follow the WHO's recommendations for producing locally available hand rubs rather than using other people's ideas online that may not be actually useful to you. Now, a word on cleaning and recycling: they have to be completely empty, they have to be completely dry, and then you have to use a chlorine or a strong alcohol, 100% almost alcohol, to actually sterilize them. These things can grow bugs in them, and you do not want to actually get sick from your hand rub, do you? Now, the other thing is the cost. You'll notice the costs probably have risen because the inputs that we're going to have are going to cost more than they would if we bought them in Pakistan or Mali. But it's worth having a look, and I did in fact have a look at what is available. Now Kitty's actually got quite a bit of glycerol in the house because she uses it for hand creams and a face cream, so that's pretty good, because that's one of the issues of things that are actually missing. So I'll just put up some product sites that I looked at in Canada today, March 6th. I didn't buy, I don't need to buy, I have enough commercial stuff, and that's what I'm going to go with. And I don't envision having to use a huge amount of hand rub. The number one thing to do in a pandemic is not to have to wear a mask or to wash your hands, because you're not actually in contact with other people directly by being close to them, or indirectly by touching stuff that they have touched. Now do bear in mind, baggage handlers have now caught this in England. Bear in mind this is falling somewhere between swine flu in 2009, which wasn't that big a deal, and Spanish flu in 1918, which was a huge deal. We're somewhere in the middle of that. We can go Spanish flu, we can go swine flu. Things can get weak, things can get stronger. We don't know where we're going with this. But what I can tell you with absolute certainty, this is going to cause a huge economic and social disruption over the next 3 months or so. I think it's wishful thinking to think come April and the sun shines, it goes away. I don't think it will. It could. I very much doubt it will. I'm not recommending any of these sites, I'm not recommending any of these products. This is just a random selection. I was looking for stuff that's actually in stock and available and will ship. So glycerin is glycerol, but you need to get really strong glycerin. It has to be 98% or higher. So that's one of the first things that you want to look at if you're going to use glycerin. You're also going to definitely need hydrogen peroxide. Now hydrogen peroxide is pretty useful anyway as a disinfectant, a very strong disinfectant. It requires safe handling, so if you're going to get this stuff, look at how to deal with it and what you're supposed to do with it. The other one is isopropyl alcohol. So if you can't get ethanol, which is going to be restricted because you need 98-99% ethanol, which ethanol is alcohol, that's going to be tough to get. So I looked at isopropyl alcohol, and as you'll see from this site, it is currently unavailable. However, it is available if you look at some of the other links. Glycerol itself is still available, but again, a lot of the products are unavailable when you look for them. So you might want to consider getting vegetable grade glycerin. So anything you can eat is probably the standard you want to look for on this. But it's going to be a bit of a search, and as you can see, the prices are starting to get very, very, very high. So my message is, get commercial stuff, use soap wherever you can, try and limit your exposure to other people and to stuff they've handled as much as you can, so you don't need much of this stuff. But if you've got a small business and you want to keep going during a possible quarantine lockdown of your area, actually providing hand rub in your store is going to be a real big incentive for people to come into the store. Probably not going to be altogether legal to sell homemade hand rub, but I doubt in a quarantine lockdown situation you'll actually find much trouble, especially if you're actually gifting it to the local police. I hope this helps. Don't be intimidated. Some of the recipes look a bit chemically, but there's actually only 3 major ingredients, 4 if you include boiled sterile water. They say distilled water, and that's a good idea, but you can just boil water, really boil it, get it sterile before using it, and it will work. I would filter it through a Berkey if you can, but you don't want any particles in the water for sure. But the hydrogen peroxide should still be able to get in. It's a good idea. It's a pretty strong disinfectant, needs safe handling. Glycerol or isopropyl alcohol or ethanol, they're the three things that you might want to try and get hold of now. You only need ethanol or isopropyl alcohol. You don't need both. But depending on where you live, what's available and the cost of it, I would look for both and then make your decision. The actual chemistry, this is fairly straightforward. I wouldn't recommend doing it inside the home. There's going to be a huge fire risk from using these materials, a massive fire risk. And when you have the stuff, the major risk is going to be people smoking near it and it exploding. So be very careful if you're going to do this, where you're going to store it and how you're going to treat it after you've made it. The other one is ingestion. Obviously this stuff will make people go blind, and it's a massive alcohol boost, and it could really damage people's livers if they're drinking it. So again, be a little careful about what you're doing about this. So I don't recommend you make your own hand rub. I don't think for most of us there's any need whatsoever to make it. But I do think it's really important going forward into the future that you make sure that you have a sufficient stock of hand rub in your home and soap in your home and the ability to make laundry detergent in your home, because they're the things that kill 2.2 million people, mostly children, around the world today, not pandemic related. And in a grid down situation where there's no electricity and no mains water, all of this basic hygiene stuff becomes critical, life critical, and I don't think it should be ignored. And I think we should be looking forward to the end of this pandemic and making sure that we safely transition through the pandemic. We are still in containment. I will get into that later on in a different video, but mitigation is really where we're kind of at right now. Containment's still a factor, but we're really looking forward to mitigation, which means we can't contain it in our local communities, so we have to try and deal with it. There's actually a third step after mitigation, which we will save for the next video. As far as I know, no other prep has been talking about that phase, and it's a really, really critical phase, and basically it boils down to survival. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions, ask them below. Bear in mind, I am not a pharmacist, nor am I a chemist. I am a registered nurse and I do have a bit of a science background, but I personally have looked at this and I don't see any need whatsoever for me or the average person to make their own hand rub at this point. However, having this material available might actually help my hospital out if things get really bad, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to look at this, because if we run out of hand sanitizer, if we run out of N95 masks, I and Kitty still have to go into patients' rooms who've got COVID-19 and deal with them, and saying I'm not going in isn't really an option. It's actually illegal, but on top of that, from a moral point of view, we've looked at this and talked about this, and we don't want to put ourselves in the position where we have to go in there unprotected, but at the same time I think relying on normalcy, relying on the hospital and the government to provide us the equipment that we need to be safe, nursing people with COVID-19 might be an error. And if it isn't an error, whatever, we're prepped for it in case that happens. And as a bonus feature at the end of this video, and I'm actually going to put it on quite a few videos, is how to actually use hand sanitizer properly and how to use soap and water properly to wash your hand. It is absolutely critical that you don't have rings on and you can wash your hands properly and you keep your nails controlled. Hand to mouth, hand to eyes, hand to nose. That's how most people are going to catch this. They don't really need gas masks, they don't really need masks in public. Do need masks in public if you're going to be within 2 meters of somebody for a period of time. What you absolutely always will need in public is the ability to keep your hands off your face and to clean your hands, either at the time or when you return home. But you must not touch your face. Remember, everything you touch in the public sphere from now on has sticky red jam all over it, and if you get sticky red jam on your hands and you put it here, you could die. Percentages of death for this are significant for all age groups.
Well, it's supposed to be a cone to stop her licking her wounded leg. We'll see if it works.
It's quite dashing, isn't it?
It's not up the other way because I'm afraid she'll fall over.
Put it up the other way, that's fun.
Her balance isn't very good.
Yeah, just put it up, she'll have to fit.
I'm going to be on it, dear.
It's supposed to be this way round. Oh my goodness, if it was red, she'd be a handmaiden. Yeah, you're probably quite right. It's probably not that safe.
No.
They're very dashing, Becky. Very, very dashing. That was a Bad Terrier 2020 production.